Today, we explore an exciting theme, embracing change and overcoming depression. In one place, the power of your voice with Mike Murphy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Power of Your Voice podcast, and I'm your host, Mike Murphy. And first of all, I want to thank you all for coming here every week. The audience is growing, the show's growing, we're super excited, and we're working as hard as we can to bring you great content that hopefully will help you, and you'll be able to share with others that are in need of the content that we try to deliver each and every week. So I'm super excited about today's guest. You know, have you ever had a bad day? And you know, for me, I only got a couple hours sleep last night, so it's been a bit of a struggle for me. And preparing for this interview got me re-energized because this person is so dynamic, so inspirational, so motivational. I don't know if you can see this picture, but you're going to see his smiley face here in a second. But when you can't be feeling low or down when you look at a guy like this, right? So let me introduce him. Meet Amrit Sandhu. Is an international speaker, podcast host, and founder of the Inspired Evolution podcast, which I was just a guest on not too long ago. Certified by Mr. Eckhart Tolle's School of Awakening, and he's also Mindvalley's Master Certified Trainer for Australia and India. Amrit delivers keynotes, talks, seminars, and workshops for the Inspired Evolution and Mindvalley in the United States, Europe, Asia, and Australia. Welcome.
It is such a pleasure to be here, brother. Thank you so much for having me.
And good morning. He's coming to, I'm in Colombia, South America. He's in Australia, and it's, I don't know what time it is here. I think it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he's like, just woke up at 7 a.m. there.
Yeah,
so
this is a very pan-international podcast, that's for sure.
I love it, man. Well, you know, like I said, first of all, I love your story. I love what you're doing, and you are very inspiring to me, so I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you, brother. It means a lot to me.
In preparing for the show today, you know, you talk about your bout with depression, and so I'm just curious, what was that like? How did that happen, if you know? And more importantly, what did you do to get out of it?
Wow. Okay, straight into it. So what was it like? So I didn't know any different when I was in it, to be honest.
How old were you?
6 years between... when did I go see the psychologist? 23, 24. So 6 years leading into that. So between 17 to 23, 24, I would say 18, that sort of age.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just probably coming out of puberty, going into young adolescence.
Okay.
That was it. And yeah, I just didn't know that there was a different way to be, because at that point, it's still quite formative in the years. And I think, obviously, I'm Mr. Inspired Evolution in some ways, so we're always forming, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like every year is formative in its own way, but those years especially, quite formative. You're leaving, high school, training towards university or your next business or stuff that's coming up for you. You're really meeting the world, and for me, I couldn't meet the world the way the world wanted me to meet it, and what that really looked like was I was fronting, is a polite way of putting it. If you really want to dig deeper, if we're going to find the power of our voice, I was full of shit. Was really what was going on.
You were faking it. You were faking it until you could hopefully make it, huh?
That was basically it.
Yeah.
That was basically it. That's probably the nicest way and the most cleanest way to put it. But I actually thought everybody was doing this, and so I thought that was reality 101. And it's interesting and that's one of the things that now, having worked with so many people, it's almost like, when you see a cliff on one side and there's a cliff on the other side and there's a little massive ditch in the middle. And when you have good mental health, you're standing on the top of one cliff and you look across and you can see across the cliff and you can see the horizon on the other side, and it's great. But what happens when you have poor mental health? You're actually in the ditch, right? And when you try to look for the horizon or the way forward, you really can't see it. And so reality just looks like what it looks like in the ditch. And that metaphor works on both ends, because those that have poor mental health, it's kind of hard to dig yourself out when you don't know where you're going, because you can't see. And you feel like this is what reality is. And for those that are trying to help people with poor mental health, just because you can see across the ditch and it's pretty easy and it's like, come on, pucker up, get out of bed, off you go.
Right.
It's that advice doesn't work, because you're not in the ditch. You don't actually know what it's like, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, it felt like I was always trying my hardest to be someone I wanted to be, but not who I was. There was a real disconnect between the two.
Yeah.
And I had no trouble at the time speaking my way forward, which was dishonest, but and I was totally okay with that because I thought everybody was doing that. And I thought that was everyone's basic operating system.
Yeah.
And it manifested in the big things, it manifested in the small things. In the small things, you know, Mike and I could be going out for dinner tonight and he'd be like, all right, cool, I'll see you at the restaurant at 6. And he'll call me at 6:05. How far away are you, mate? You're late. And it's like, oh, I'll be there at 6:10. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Don't worry, I'll be there in 5 minutes. At 6:30, he's like, where are you, mate? And it's like, oh, I'll just be there in 5 minutes. And then it's like, I rock up at 7:15. And at that point, it's, you know, interacting with me with Amrit is not that fun. Because when Amrit's on the phone, he's just placating. He's like, hey, I'll be there in 5 minutes because maybe there's no emotional depth. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. But I'm trying to put my best foot forward in the interactions that I'm having. And it's like, hey, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Don't hate me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we can talk about where don't hate me comes from. That comes from my values. But it's consistently doing that. And that's like the small thing. And then the bigger thing, it was, you know, there was so much around like, I'm doing this in life. I'm doing that in life. I had 3 jobs at the time and, you know, trying to really hustle and grind. And I was traveling a lot and I was meant to be studying and wasn't really working on my degree because there was no accountability at university. It's a free environment. And I was just doing what I was pleased by, which was basically earning money, traveling, which I have no regrets about, touch wood. But when push came to shove and it's like, hey, how are things progressing with your academics? I would just always be like, oh yeah, I could almost rest on my laurels because in high school I had, touch wood, pretty solid academics. And so then I always was just like, oh, you know, it's fine, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
And then things started to come apart where it was like, the university was like, dude, you're not here. You're obviously somewhere else. And I was like, well, you can't kick me out because I've got a reputation for being an academic. Right? And then they're like, no, you're no longer welcome here.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa. Like, and you can imagine as someone that's, you know, young adolescent, I was like, you know, you've got an identity around something. So mine was like academic and social, right? Like I was a social guy, but I was academic and I was, you know, like I liked that about myself. Some people are sporty, you know, some people are, everybody's got a thing, right? And that was a massive identity dissolution for me. And I was like, like the walls were like caving in and my relationships were suffering significantly. It's almost like the pressure just built up around there and I like everything. And that's what landed. And you said, what did you do to change? So I don't think I've given the full gusto of how like difficult it was to live through that.
But did they actually kick you out of school?
Yeah.
So that was your bottom. That was your bottom to say, okay, okay, all right, keep going.
Yeah. Letter came home and everyone's like, what the fuck is this? Like, what? Where did this come from? And I was like, what do you mean, where did this come from? And I didn't even give them the real reason as to why I like cooked up a whole nother story. And I was like, here's another me putting my best foot forward. Right. And like, I'm not, and that was just like, and that started to unravel so fast because that story was so like not kosher. People were like, I can see right through that. And it's like, what's going on with you? And then it was just all like holding on to like this identity that I'd created for myself and just trying to put my best foot forward. Like, it was just like holding on to water. Everything was just slipping. It was just falling through my hands. And at that point I knew something was wrong. And I'm grateful actually that society is having this conversation more these days. Because the fact that I saw even buses had like, you know, advertisements about, you know, are you struggling or, you know, are you okay? And it sort of made it okay for me to go speak to a GP.
Okay.
And I went to the GP and I was like, hey, I don't really know what's going on, but something's not right. And it was one of the best things I've ever done for myself. And I'm not sure how at that age, when I was so in a ditch, I had that level of clarity that that's where I needed to go because it was self-directed. So I ended up speaking to the GP and they were like, yeah, like all the symptoms you're presenting, like I was agitated, I had all this stuff. And they're like, all the symptoms you're presenting, you've been struggling with depression, you need to see a psychologist. And so I went and saw a psychologist and she was a very interesting lady to interact with. I remember at the time I was triggered by her. She was wearing this white fluffy rubber jumper, and I'm like, young adolescent male, and I'm like, come on, man, like fluffy white jumper, like pick your color, a piece of paper, make an affirmation for yourself. And I was like, really, man, is this really what you do? Like, I was just arrogant, and it was. But she pulled the car. She was amazing at what she did. She was amazing. She basically just pulled the one thread. Because I can tell you now that it was like dishonesty that was the issue, but she wasn't she just listened to me talk for 30 minutes, and what she said next was super powerful because she said, Amrit, you're going to be okay. And at the time I was like, how can you say that? You've just told me that I've struggled with depression for 6 years based on everything you've heard, and you're telling me I'm going to be okay. And she's like, yeah, you're going to be fine. And it's only going to be a few months. And I was like, how can you say that? I almost was offended. I was like, you just said I was going through it for 6 years. I almost need like a 6-year plan to cure it. There's again, male bravado, ego thing, or maybe it's just an Amrit thing.
Right.
And at that point, she turned around and she goes, no, because of two things. A, something's wrong. And B, you're here and you want to change it.
Yes.
Now, at the time, I didn't pay any attention to A and B. I was just like, oh, okay, that's good. Yeah, okay, cool. And I just kept going with her session. In hindsight, having now coached over 250 people, and worked with thousands of people in rooms all over the world, those two things are so important.
Well, and when you were talking, I was going to tell you I knew she was going to say that because you had the wherewithal to say, now maybe you got some pressure for at home, getting kicked out of school and all that bullshit, but, I went through this with my son. When you were talking, I was really thinking about my son who's thriving today, thank God. But when someone has the wherewithal to go and seek out help, they're gonna be okay.
It's and I look back sometimes and I go, where did that, because we talked about the ditch before. How did I get that vision to be able to be like, this is where I need to go help? And I still, for the life of me, and that's where I start getting woo-woo.
So
that's where I start going.
I would, if I wanted to dig deeper into that, I'd ask you about your childhood because I find that when things are difficult, we return to our foundation. So I'm going to assume you had some sort of solid foundation as a youngster. Is that correct?
I have some parts of my childhood which were really robust. I have other parts of my childhood which were less than ideal, but I think, maybe that's my own projection, but I think everybody has something in their childhood. The Jesuits said it, right? If you show me the boy before 7, I'll show you the man.
There you go. There you
go. So, in my childhood, and you're accurate to point it out that way. At the crux of what was going on, and this is where it was inevitable that I was going to end up talking about values. I grew up in an Indian household. My family were immigrants
in Australia. So you're
in Australia
from India, growing up in Australia. Gotcha.
Yeah, so I'm first generation here. I was born here.
Okay.
And so I grew up, and my parents did everything for me. Yeah, I was the only child. Touch wood. They sent me to the best school Adelaide has to offer, and it was a lot to send a kid to a private school, but they pushed in their business, but also that looked like they were too busy to come to. And, it was never lost on me how much they were sacrificing to give me the opportunities that they were giving me. Yeah. Right. And so that was this massive push to be an academic as well, because it was like, well, this is my opportunity. And, this is what makes them proud. But then they also didn't manage to show up to when I won all the awards and the accolades, touch wood. And then I just kept trying to get bigger awards and bigger accolades and become more academic. So there is that, that we're looking for recognition, reward from our parents, touch wood, and that's it. Part of everybody's story, right? Until you do the work and untether all of those links. But so I grew up in an immigrant Indian family, and the values in India are very different to the values in Australia. And there's nothing wrong with India. There's nothing wrong with Australia. There's nothing that much greater about India. There's nothing that much greater about Australia. They both have their pros. They both have their cons. But they are different, the East and the West.
Night and day.
And that, right. And so that was one of the things. So one of the, let's go there. So one of the unfortunate consequences, I believe, this is my analysis of it, so take it how you will, is a function of population, pollution, and corruption. Like Indians will say something like to use that, like, yeah, we are corrupt, but at least you can see it.
Right.
And then it's like, wow. It's like, okay, so you're calling out the West for being corrupt as well, but they're like better at hiding it. So they're at least we're transparent about our corruption, but they are like, there is still that dishonesty, and it's like there's this. And when you hear something like that, there's like I don't want to say it's pride about being dishonest, but it's like it's an acceptance of being dishonest, right?
Yeah.
So there's this thing about the Indian culture, and I can't damn the whole culture. There's so much in it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But it may be a spiritual thing as we reflect in this conversation, right? Like the Hindu faith believes that reality is an illusion. Everything is Maya, right? So if everything is an illusion and we're just here as an illusion, maybe that is one of the tenets that you're putting your best foot forward, and it's okay to do that, right? I don't know. But I couldn't reconcile that with Western values. And that was where the rub really was. Right. Because here in India, it was like, okay, because we've got population, it's huge. There's heaps of pollution. There's heaps of corruption. To get ahead and you meet someone, wear your suit and tie, because there's so many other people fighting for the opportunity that you've got. Like there is like I think fifth of the world's population right now lives in that one country. Yeah. Yeah. Like that's huge. Yeah,
I think India and China is half the world's population.
Probably is. Yeah. Probably is, right? And so, boom, you're looking at that, and it's just so cutthroat that you've got to put your best foot forward. So it's so easy to judge from my Western like upbringing. Why do they have to do that? Why can't they just be themselves? And it's like, no, that's not fair. The environment
completely
is
different.
So competitive.
Completely different.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that is my privilege speaking when it says that. So I was like, all right, that's what is theirs. And when my parents moved here, that's just part of the culture, like that's come with it, right? Now my parents are honest people, but that's part of the culture that I was raised in, right? Like I didn't grow up with Disney. I grew up with Bollywood films. Right. Yeah, so I grew up in that culture. And then now I've grown up as an adolescent male, and in the street, like now, I'll give you an easy example. So Mike's like, I'm running late for dinner with Mike, right? And it's like, Mike's like, hey, 6:05, where are you at, Amrit? And I'm like, hey, Mike, I'm going to be there probably around 7:30. I'm so sorry. Can you have a couple of beers and dinner's on me? Right? Like
but you're being honest. You're being transparent, authentic.
But this is the thing. I'll probably be there at 7:15. Knowing I'm going to be there at 7:15, I'm going to say 7:30
right.
just to give me a little bit of buffer now, to make sure that I don't let him down and I'm being as honest as I can. And then I get there at 7:15. He's like, oh, you're actually a little bit earlier than you said. And it's like, yeah, but I'm still late, bro. So that has been like a massive shift to go through, right? And stack that honesty. But the key thing she said was like, hey, and that pointing to what you said was like the difference between the upbringing and the world that I was in. And that friction was kind of what I was coming up against and that was the root cause of the depression. And that's what she pinpointed. And she was like, A, you're going to be fine because A, you know something's wrong, B, you want to change. And then she said, all you need to do is install honesty. And part of me, like the floor just opened up. Like let I say literally, like the fabric of whatever I was sitting on, she just pulled the one thread that just the ground opened up and like everything started to unravel. I was like, what? How did you? Shit. Oh. And people often ask me, they're like, did you end up like apologizing to everybody that you'd been dishonest to? Think about how many interactions you've had in the last year with how many different people.
Oh my gosh.
Times that by 6. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like, and my honest truth is I have gone back and reconciled a lot because of, the inspired evolution and what it invites me to become, touch wood. But even in there, the hardest thing, my truth is it was so hard to even come to terms with the fact of how dishonest I had been with myself. And just reconciling that wound was a huge body of work in itself. Yeah. Yeah.
Allow me to play armchair psychologist here for a second. I'm just curious about something. Because your parents are Indian, excuse me, from India. And were they practicing Hinduism?
No, my mum was Hindu, but my dad's Sikh.
Okay. So I kind of think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but So but you have to kind of play this role for that experience. But you're over here in Australia with all these Western values, so you're kind of caught in two worlds, right? So maybe it was easy to be disingenuous sometimes over here, and you had to be disingenuous over here, and you just kind of created a habit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there is this, it's very slippery when, if we're going there, let's go there. You don't really have a home.
Yes.
You don't really have a home. And this is probably, identity and speaking to that, because whenever I'd go to India, like I've got a massive network of cousins, and then it's like, oh, the Aussies here. Yeah, and Australia is super, and now it's a lot more political correctness here in Australia.
Right,
But when I grew up, it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
My best friends were Korean, Malaysian, Greek, Italian, and Anglo. So there was like 6 of us, right? So it's and Australia it's a country 200 years young. So everyone's from somewhere.
It's like the U.S.
Yeah?
It's like the U.S.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And so, I grew up with this, and it's like, we literally, as part of our banter, were what now people would just be like, you guys were so racist. And it's like, yeah, we were. But for us, that was our camaraderie.
Right.
Like celebrating our differences unapologetically is probably how I look at it. But for my mates, I was the Indian guy.
Right.
Right? And then I'd go to India and I'm like, I'm one of you. And they're like, no, you're the Australian guy. And I'm like, oh.
Interesting.
And you never anybody anywhere. And then you're like, okay, well, in Australia, I'm this Indian guy. Well, okay, I can be the Indian guy if you need me to be the Indian guy. And I was like, you go to Australia. It's like, I need to be the Australian guy if you want me to be the Australian guy in India. And it's like, and so you're living this lack of identity. And so you're just trying to do the best you can with what you've got in each of the environments you've got. So you don't really have a center, maybe is the nice way of putting it.
Well,
but yeah, like.
Well, while you were talking, what I was thinking about, and one of my favorite topics is, and because I've run to bring this up right away, because depression and mental health is going in the wrong direction in a big way right now, especially after the pandemic, especially with the inflation, especially with the craziness in the world, from transgenderism to the Ukraine war. But it's goofy out there, right? But to me, to put it all in perspective, I think one of our number one goals in life is to get where we're comfortable in our own skin, and then you're free.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't have put it better myself. I couldn't have put it better myself.
And I think one of the most beautiful, and you're an expert at this, but one of the most beautiful ways is to get comfortable in your own skin is through meditation, and to go within. Because I find that we have these two eyes always. We're looking out here for God. We're looking out here for wealth. We're looking out here for love. It's all within. All we got to do is close our eyes and go within, feel it. And once we start feeling it, we're going to experience it in physical reality.
The meditation gave me the opportunity. So when I'm in this lady's office, she's going, you need to install honesty. And I'm like, yep, crap, got that. Don't know how to do that, but let's try. And then I walked out, and two big things, right? So firstly, she gave me a box of pills. I took my first pill, and I remember taking it, and it was amazing. I was like, holy, I can feel like this. And then 4 hours later, I came down, and I was like, oh, I'm back. And I was like, oh, I don't want to live life on a roll. I didn't know much, but like as a young adolescent male, I was just like, nah, man. Like I don't want to be at the subject of these little pills going up and down and up and down. And I just picked them up, put them in the bin, even though they were my lifeline. Luckily, the GP gave me this one exercise, and she was like, here's a breathing exercise. I remember her going, and I was like, you realize what the psychologist said, yeah? Like 6 years, because she had to sign off some forms after I'd seen a psychologist. And she was like, yeah, but I used to do a lot of mental health work myself before I started specializing in skin cancer, et cetera, touch wood. And she goes, here's a breathing exercise. I was like, what? And she's like, count your breaths. Breathe in 1, breathe out 2. All through your nose. Breathe in 3, breathe out 4, breathe in 5, all the way up to 10, and then come back down. See if you can remember your breaths. Yeah. And I remember looking at her, and again, young adolescent male, so pardon this, but I was just like, I wanted to headbutt her. I was like, dude, breathing? Like, I'm alive. Like, it's something that mammals do naturally. Like, what is, hello? Yeah. Like, what? Breathing. All right, thanks. Really appreciate it. Can you sign the form and I can get out of here? And by some grace of God, I was walking, as we now know, like, got kicked out of school. I was walking at university, clearing out my locker and stuff. And this was the last day that I was there. And I felt the walls closing in. I was so afraid someone would see me clearing out my locker. I was like, what's wrong? Where are you going? What's going on? And the walls were closing in. And I didn't realize at the time, but I used to speak. We didn't have social media. So I used to call my mates and speak to them for hours on the phone. It was actually my lifeline. It's good to know what your lifelines are, by the way, if you're struggling with mental health.
Yep.
By some grace of God, at the time, I had a clear cover, and I'd put the breathing exercise. She had a Post-it note with it for like 5 steps and shit, and I'd put it in the back of my phone, facing outwards, and I didn't even realize that I'd done that. I must have been, some part of me, past self, was looking out for my future self.
Yep.
Picked up my phone, went to call someone, looked at the exercise, and I was like, all right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I shit you not, that moment, I'll never forget it. The corridor expanded. Like,
wow.
I did it. It was modulating conscious. I don't know how else to do. The walls were literally closing in, and now I know that feeling to be anxiety, right? I didn't want someone to come. I was worried about what the future could be. So worry about the future is anxiety. Concerns about the past is depression, right?
Yep.
So I was looking at this, and the walls started moving back out, and I was like, oh my God, I have space. And I'm like, I'm breathing. And I was like, what? And I just started leaning in on that super heavy. And so that was mindfulness. That was my first foray into mindfulness, which there's a difference between meditation and mindfulness. Meditation is a much broader brush thing, and mindfulness lives somewhere like as a thing within there.
Yeah.
So as a practice within there. And mindfulness gave me the opportunity, and I was leaning in on it. And then I started reading books like The Happiness Trap, and started like learning, what I'm doing in this breathing is mindful. I'm just coming back to the present moment.
Yeah.
Started consuming the content of people like Eckhart Tolle, and it's like, dude, just be here now. When you're in the future, you're anxious. When you're in the past, you're depressed. And yes, there's a lot in your past to be, reconciled, but don't live there, like just come back to the present, because that's where you're most resourced. And slowly things will change. And so from there, I started really building a relationship with mindfulness for the next 6 months. And then the word honesty, like it really was there. It was like, okay, I need to try. But if I told you, from that point on, I walked out of her office and I was honest. And I was like, no, everything takes an integration period. It takes time to integrate these things. And that's where the meditation really, really, really started taking off, because I went from mindfulness, and thankfully, touch wood, my father had an incredible meditation practice, has an incredible meditation practice. He would just sit in the sun every morning for like an hour, and he'd just sit there. But it was always something my dad did. It was never really something for me.
Right.
And then when all this happened, I started connecting to mindfulness. I was like, oh yeah, my dad does it. I've seen an archetype of someone doing that every morning, just sitting for like 30, 60 minutes with their eyes closed in the sun. I'm going to try to do the same thing. Just sit there. And when I started sitting there, like obviously your mind, now when I look at meditation, mindfulness is an opportunity to sit back and go, how many tabs are open in my mind?
Yeah.
And you just look at the tabs on the browser.
Yeah.
Meditation is an opportunity to defrag the hard drive.
Yeah.
Right? So it goes into what files were open, whoa. And then when you're present, because you don't really get to stillness until you start spending some time just observing, and your brain will go, oh, remember that thought? And you go, okay, come back.
Yeah.
Remember that thought? And then you're like, oh, come back. But all that stuff is getting defragged.
Yep.
And what would often get defragged is like, oh, I was meant to be honest and I was dishonest and such and such. I was meant to be honest. And those are the thoughts that would come up because I was harboring. Intentional living is what the Inspired Evolution is all about. An intention, right? And so the intention was honesty. And what was coming up again and again when I was looking within was like, oh, you weren't honest here, you weren't honest here. But because I was giving myself that awareness, as you become more and more aware of things, you naturally don't want to rub the cat the wrong way, and things start to shift and change. And so that made it easier. The mindfulness really helped with the symptoms of anxiety and depression. And the meditation started to give me the opportunity to install the value of honesty deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into my system as a value.
Yeah.
And that was a game changer because, you talk about being out of different values, different systems. Now I know my values are connection, contribution,
honesty,
and celebration.
and honesty.
Right? those are my 3 values.
Yeah.
And if I'm doing that, that's the honest expression of me.
Yeah.
I'm connecting, I'm contributing, and I'm celebrating. If it wasn't for that fundamental block of honesty being installed, I wouldn't have been able to go, oh, yeah, and what is the honest truth of me finding myself? Because you said before, it's like we're not our truest selves.
Right.
And my truest self is Amrit that connects, Amrit that contributes, Amrit that celebrates. Everything you read out in the bio, public speaking, podcasting, coaching. I'm connecting with people deeply. I'm doing that with you here now. I'm doing that in stages all over the world. I'm doing that in coaching sessions, even via Zoom, connecting. Hopefully I'm contributing. People are hopefully getting some insight into mental health and values and purpose around this conversation. So there's hopefully some sort of contribution that's valuable. I like to think so. But obviously, you know, the ego loves to self-flagellate, so touch wood, which pardon that. And then there's celebration. And that's, you know, for me, that's health, vitality. That's what the meaning of life is for me. So those are my values.
Let me interrupt 1 second because I want to give a commercial to the audience because everything you just said is so valuable. And I have so many people in my life right now that are struggling with anxiety and panic attacks. And listen to what this man just figured out, right? Really 2 things. 1, be honest. And most importantly, be honest with yourself. You know, at least he was honest enough with himself to go to the GP, go to the psychologist, right? And then the power of breath, all it's bringing is you into the present moment. In the present moment, there are no problems, okay? All the problems are back here or out there. Right here, there's nothing. And what was cool, the first time the guy starts to do breath work, okay, he has an LSD experience in the hallway. But that's the power of this, that when we go within and we focus on our breath, and breath is everything. You can't go more than a couple minutes without breath, so imagine how important that is. So we need to feed those lungs, but more importantly, we need to quiet this mind. You know, I love Byron Katie. I'm sure you're familiar with her. And one of her favorite sayings that I love is that the worst thing anybody can ever be found guilty of is believing a thought that's not true. You know, because when you believe a thought that's not true, you take an action based on stuff that's not, and that's where we get in trouble. But when we're present and we're aware and we're conscious, then we question every thought and we move into this beautiful heart and we see how it feels. Life gets a lot easier. So I really wanted to recap because you really went deep in that subject right there. So I really wanted to just give because so many people in my personal life that are experiencing this. Now I have to ask you this.
Yeah.
And you're the second guy this week that's been to the Eckhart Tolle School of Awakening. Chris Sarok. You know Chris Sarok?
No.
He was on yesterday, but he went there. So anyways, the reason I have to ask you is I had to read the Power of Now at least 12 times before I could figure out what the hell was he talking about. And then I go, well, I'm tired of reading this, so I'm going to try listening to it. And I couldn't stay awake for more than 30 seconds because of the monotone voice. But it's the most profound book I've ever read. And I really had to struggle to get it. What was your experience first getting exposed to it, reading the book, and then actually working with Eckhart?
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Thanks so much for asking that question. So you're absolutely right. The book it's written in a form where it's question, answer, because Eckhart's worked with a lot of people. And even being coached by Eckhart, you run the risk of getting extremely frustrated at certain times, which is, again, it's an opportunity for you to look at all your own stuff. Because what ends up happening is like, hey, Eckhart, what about this?
Yeah.
Or, hey, Eckhart, what about that? And it's like, who's asking? Where are they asking from? Something that happened to you
Seriously,
in the past.
seriously.
Oh, okay.
He's really like this in normal life.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And then you're just like, oh, okay, yep, that was a past. And it's like, but what about, and he's like, why are you asking that? And it's like, oh, because I want to map my future. And he's like, that's not now. And it's like tunk, 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 like everything is now. And it's like, now is the medicine. Like, drink the cup.
Yeah.
Drink it. Like, drink it. It's now. Like, and he is a master. He truly is a master. He's
mastered it. Whatever it is, he's got
awareness of, I don't want to call it a boundary, but he understands the bounds of like what's within and what's without the now.
Yeah.
And all the nuances that the mind in its plays to sort of slip through the gate and go, hey, what about what's coming up tomorrow? Or what about what happened over there? And it's like, oh, I wonder, I don't want to do that again. And it's like, yeah, that's your monkey brain. That's it trying to do its primitive thing. It wants to connect to the tribe and be part of like, you know, being ostracized and being exiled was worse than death.
Yeah.
So it's going to try to fit in. It's going to do all those things, but that's in the past. Death in the future.
Yeah.
You're here now. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like I recommend people read the audiobook. And so you're not actively reading, you're listening.
Yeah.
And one of the things I do, this is just part of my practice, because I can smash an audiobook in 8 hours. And that's pretty much what I do for podcast research. I like listen to an audiobook about once or twice. I listen to it twice the speed. It's probably why I talk so fast. I should learn to just...
But you don't talk fast. I talk fast. You're so measured compared to me. So keep going.
And so in there, it's, you can, what I notice about that is when I pick up a book and I go to read it, I don't normally stop to, it'll normally take me 2 weeks to read, 3 weeks, maybe even a month to read a book.
Yeah.
So over time, what I realized, I was consuming a lot of content, but not actually digesting it, integrating it. So now if I take an audiobook, I go, okay, this is the audiobook for the next month, and I'm gonna just keep listening to it on repeat. Yeah. And that's what I invite you to do with Eckhart Tolle's Power Now. It's like, listen to it. You might fall asleep a couple of times.
Right.
You might get you might get the first 2 chapters in, and then the next time you go you recap a chapter and you move further forward, and then eventually you get through the whole thing. Yeah. And you realize that it is hard to listen to because it's so repetitive.
Yeah.
But the magic is people come with all these different questions to him. Yeah. And he modulates that and then brings it back into, and now is the solution. Yeah. Now is the solution. Now is the solution. And it's then you start to realize, whoa, like all these different myriad issues, like the book goes on for ages. I think the audiobook's about 8 hours, 6 hours, 6 or 8 hours. I don't remember. But yeah, and it's like, and it all comes back to one pill, one solution, the now. Yeah. And then you start to realize, well, this now thing is pretty epic because it can dissolve so much. Yeah. Right. And therein lies the real magic of the book. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the power of now. Yeah. And for me, it was huge to work with him because what he presented was like, do you want to be certified to be presence and purpose? And for me, as maybe young adolescent male again, but purpose has been this massive thing. Like the minute purpose clicks in, mental health just tightens up behind it. That's just what I've found, right? And that's the message in my heart. So I was always just having this message that your health is your purpose is your health, with a massive skew to mental health. And here's Mr. Now, Mr. Presence, talking about purpose. And I'm like, but purpose is off in the future, Eckhart. You're not allowed to talk about you can't, sorry, excuse me. And he's like, I'm going to train you and certify you to be presence and purpose coach. And I was like, I just want to see what he says about it. I just want to learn what he says about purpose. So let's do this. So the certification was interesting because, again, ultimately, I'm going to let the cat out the bag, but your purpose is to be here. Now. Right? Yeah. That's your purpose. Yeah. And it's difficult, if I'm completely transparent, to lean into the training that it runs my operating system a great deal. Yeah. Like taking everything I've learned from there. But I don't find myself able to coach. The fundamentals are exactly the same, but the delivery is completely different. Yeah. And I have found that to be necessary because I'm not Eckhart Tolle. Yeah. Right? So if I'm sitting here, I'm like, hey guys, just be here now. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, okay.
Thanks.
And it's like, but that's not really, thanks, bro. It's not, there's nothing, whereas meeting people where they're at, is kind of what I have learned to do as a coach and go, okay, let's talk about where you do want to go, right? Because people have dreams and a vision actually attracts things in. And it's like, yep, totally. It works, right? But don't, once you set your vision, actually don't think about what it could be and then what it could be. No. Let's sit down. Let's work together for 12 weeks. Take a category of your life a week for the next 12 weeks and map out a vision for each of those things and put it in a journal. Now you've got this vision journal. You've got the book. Right. Yeah. And you can update that. Now you don't have to spend all this time in your head worrying about the future. Like you've got it written down, and it's trust that there's the alchemy of the pen and the pad. Actually, there is a whole woo-woo alchemy there, but we won't get into that. That you've written it down, and at least your mind can rest at ease. And if you want to update it, you can literally update it with a pen and just go boom, 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 boom. That's what it looks like. All right, cool. That's what's happening. And within that, you can find action steps. Now you've got action steps, and your future's looked after, and you've got action steps in the now.
Yeah.
Right. So you can come back. So yes, absolutely, it informs a whole bunch of what I do. But I don't have the context walking into a room that Eckhart Tolle has. So the content is very similar, but the context is like extremely different.
Yeah. I actually teach people to write it down as well, but then record it and listen every morning, every night, right?
I love your
Reprogram
stuff,
that conscious mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
I love it. And it was so easy to use the app. And to
was it?
like I said, I went away. Yeah, I just went away, ChatGPT. And I was like, this is the stuff that I want to affirm every single morning. And I was like, brr, and I was like, a little bit around health. And I was like, brr, and I was like, a little bit around my entrepreneurial stuff. Brr. And it just gave me this. And I was like, boom. And I just went record. And then you had the script. And then it was like, record the ChatGPT thing. And boom, it was done.
Good job.
It was so easy.
I'm proud of you.
So easy.
Hey,
Thank you.
you haven't written a book yet, have you?
There's a story here. Oh my God. Okay, so talking about ChatGPT.
Yeah, well, that one you can write in about 4 hours.
Well, this is the thing, right? So I like, okay, maybe this is vain of Amrit. So, but let's go there, right? So I was just, because I'm checking my social medias, making sure like it's part of the business, right? The Inspired Evolution, Touchwood, and we call it business, but it's my soul's offering, if you want to look at it that way. And that's generally what I'm trying to help people with their purpose. It's like that you have something burning within you to share into the world. For me, it's Inspired Evolution, right? The mode of delivery is connection, contribution, celebration, conscious conversations. But that's really what I'm here to do. And that's my purpose, right? Touch wood. So in there, like, there's such an opportunity to go, okay, what do I look at in terms of what's coming up next and consistently be on this wheel? And so I've jumped on ChatGPT and I've gone, hey, this is a really interesting tool. What does this help? Like, first question was, how can ChatGPT help me with, with my, like, plan out what I should be doing for my business? And it was like, brrr, and I was like, that's actually not my business model. And I started just talking to it, and it was like, it started coming back to me with stuff. I was like, oh, wow, this is actually like having a mate to actually talk to things like with and about. And I was like, okay, cool. And I was like, whoa, hang on a sec. I've Googled myself before, and I'm sure everybody has at some point.
Yeah.
I was like, can I just, like, who is Amrit Sandhu, Touchwood, Inspired Evolution?
Boom.
And he goes, and he pops out all this stuff, and it was like, it was bang. It was just like, yep, Amrit Sandhu, he's got a podcast called The Inspired Evolution. You know, he travels the world, does some talks on stuff that, you know, is all about expanding consciousness, which I didn't even realize that that's what it would be summarized down to. I thought it was spiritual entrepreneurship. And ChatGPT was like, no, it's about expanding consciousness. I was like, oh, it's interesting that that's what the world is getting from me. Obviously, it loosely fills in the gaps itself, so I can't, you got to take it all.
Right.
And then the very next thing it said, it was like, and he wrote this book called The Modern Monk, A Journey into the Heart of Mindfulness. And then I was like, oh, that bit's not right. And then I was like, all right, but everything else was bang on. It was like, wrote like 2 paragraphs, and I was like, but there was this half like 3 lines within, you know, 2 9-line paragraphs. And I was like, that bit's not right. Like, I haven't written the book. And then I started asking about the book. Like, when did Amrit write the book? And it was like 2019.
Whoa.
And I was like, what are the chapters in the book? And I was like, and I was like, oh, those are really good chapter headings. Like mindfulness for yourself, mindfulness for others, mindfulness for life. And I was like, well, this really should be, maybe this is a book. Maybe it's confused me with another Amrit. So then I've troweled the internet for the next hour.
Wow.
And then also like subsequently for like 20 minutes every now and then, I was like checking my phone. I was like, and the book doesn't exist in the world.
Well, what did you say the title was?
A Modern Monk, A Journey into the Heart of Mindfulness.
I love it.
See, that was the thing. I made this post on my socials. I was like, ChatGPT reckons I've written this book. And it was one of the most viral posts I've ever made. Everyone was like, dude, I actually thought you'd written the book. And I was like, I haven't written the book. And they're like, dude, that's the book you should write.
Exactly.
And I was like, oh my goodness, this is weird. This is weird. So part of me being Amrit, this is just an insight into my head, was like, oh, how great is this story? This like artificial intelligence told me that I'd written a book, and then I went away and wrote it. So I'm in the process of writing the book.
Perfect. Well, you gonna
which
keep?
when
Are you
you
gonna
speak
keep? Are you gonna keep that title?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, I think so.
all you
I
got to
think
do
so.
is
For now,
keep.
I think so.
You know, they're saying that a few years from now, the most important job will be a Chat GTP prompter. The better you
Prompt
are
engineer.
the better you are asking
Prompt
questions, right?
Yeah.
And you could write a powerful book by just keep fine tuning those questions until you get what you want.
Yeah. I think the opportunity there for writing the book lies within, because I think people connect most to stories. One of the things I've
Yeah.
learned from the
Yeah.
podcast
Yeah.
is people connect to stories.
Absolutely.
So infusing it in, like, bringing relevant stories from people that I've coached and keeping it anonymous, and
Yeah.
myself wherever appropriate,
Yeah.
without overdoing it and making it like the Amrit Fest, is the approach that I want to take writing the book, is bringing anecdotal stories that actually, like, this is, what's possible, and keeping it, digestible. Like you said, like sometimes books can be planned a certain way. For me, it's storytelling is the big part of it.
And what's interesting, and not too far future, you'll be able to do the audiobook as well through Chat GTP.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there are some really cool tools, Mike. Like,
Yeah.
now you can actually find an AI tool that will read a script in a famous person's voice for you, right? Which my first point was like, I could have an intro to the inspired evolution with, like, I don't know, like someone like just something everyone recognizes, like Tom Cruise's voice, right?
Yeah,
Or like Morgan Freeman's voice,
Yeah.
introducing the inspired evolution, right?
Right.
How cool would that be? Or,
Right.
come on, let's go there. David Attenborough introducing the inspired evolution. Like, wouldn't that just be nuts? And then I was like, hang a sec. Oh, like, I could just write out a meditation script,
Yes.
and I would save so much time,
Yes.
because it could just read it out in my voice,
Yes.
because my voice is online.
Yep.
Touch wood, the power of your voice. And it was like, wow. Then I started to find, like, my okayness with it and not okayness with it, because I was like,
Yeah. I get it.
with a meditation, there's also my presence,
Yeah.
right?
Which is a large part of the energy.
Touch wood, right? So it's great where the tool's going. It's super intriguing, but when you feel into your heart, there's also the humanness that is required.
Yeah.
within all of
Yes, I agree 100%. Okay, we only got a couple minutes later, but I got to ask you about Mandela moments.
Wow, you really did your homework. Yeah, right. Okay. Mandala Moments was actually where the podcast was birthed. That's
Okay.
what gave like wings to the inspired evolution. What it is basically a gathering in my home every fortnight was what I was doing it. Now, post having my son, I've sort of eased off of it a little bit. But it used to be every fortnight in my house, chai, chats, and community. Chai, chats, and community.
Beautiful.
People would come over and we would basically shoot the shit. We would watch a TED talk or a Mindvalley talk or Tony Robbins or someone like yourself, Mike, like, share inspiration, and we would just discourse it for the next, it was planned for the next hour and a half,
Right.
but people would still be there 6
Keep
hours later.
going,
with
yeah,
ordering
right.
and taking dinner, we'd be hanging out. And it was basically philosophy, spirituality, personal development, all these things just wrapped into an evening, which was no alcohol. We were drinking chai. It was conscious.
Beautiful.
And I was aware of a whole bunch of things at that time. My wife wasn't around, like, she had gone traveling. And so that gave
Freedom.
space for me to fill the void of connection.
Yeah,
Actually, connection is my highest value. And because she wasn't around, I was like, I lean so much into the value of connection here.
Yeah.
Other people also want to connect over these things. I'm going to just do it. Like, just come over to my house and
Facilitate
let's
it.
shoot the shit on it.
Yep. Perfect.
Right?
Yeah.
And so they came, and I was acutely aware that I was the average of the 5 people I spend my time with.
Oh,
And
interesting.
at that time, I was like spending 70 hours at work. And so I didn't really have a choice about who I was working with. And work was actually toxic for me at the time, touch wood. It just wasn't aligned to my values, right? And when I say toxic, what does that really mean? It was like, it was only half of one of my values was showing up in my top 3 values.
Yeah.
Nothing like what today looks like, right?
Right.
And so in there, I was struggling. And then I invited these people over, and the 5 people I'm the average of. And I invited my yoga teacher. I invited a book author that I knew. I invited an entrepreneur that I knew. These were all people that I don't like using the word levels because everything's always on a spectrum and everybody has different dimensions to themselves. But
Right.
there was a dimension in these guys' lives that I saw and respected and was like aspired to. I was inspired to evolve, right?
Yeah.
Oh, this person inspires me. So didn't have that languaging back then, but I had mandala moments. And a mandala moment is literally the moment you have an epiphany.
Yeah.
It's like when you spiral in on yourself and it's like brrr, the Mandelbrot, the universe is, Fibonacci sequence, mandala, sacred in wisdom. I love it. And so it was mandala moments. Let's come hang out with these people that inspire me and hopefully just engineer some moments which, can expand our awareness, expand our consciousness.
Yeah.
And there have been so many of those through that process. And people loved it. People
Perfect.
were genuinely craving. I didn't realize that there was, now this is where, then I'm like not the best entrepreneur. Right, I'll just go there. Like I have this saying that there's hardcore entrepreneurs and softcore entrepreneurs.
Right.
And I'm 100% softcore
Yeah.
entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Hardcore entrepreneur where the whole world sees risk, like going to Mars. We're going to Mars. And it's like, that is so risky, bro. I'm building a business to go to Mars. And it's like, dude, what? That is like the dumbest stuff. There is so much risk in that. And Elon Musk is there going, I see nothing but opportunity.
Yeah.
Hardcore entrepreneur.
Right.
Yeah. Then you've got someone like myself who was like, I want to live life on my own terms and I know what I'm passionate about. I'm going to go create everything that facilitates that passion. And it's totally possible in today's day and age with the internet.
Yes.
We're doing it right now. Touch
Yes.
wood, right?
Yeah.
That softcore entrepreneurialism at its best, right? And that's what I can champion.
Yeah.
Right? Really, 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 really well. So now I look back at mandala moments and it was like the perfect thing to start because people were like, hey, now you look back and there's a need in that what now I can call market because no one was like people wanted to hang out without alcohol in my community.
Yeah.
They wanted to talk about these things.
Yeah.
They wanted to connect to community. There was a massive need for it. There was a hole in the market, again, using entrepreneurial language. But it wasn't like that. It was just I was passionate about it. I wanted to do more of what I love and I wanted to connect with people and I wanted to hang out even though I wasn't drinking and all these things. And it was just all tumbled into this Mandala Moments offering.
I love it.
And I was opening up my house every fortnight.
I love it. All right, listen, we got to run. But before we go, let's say someone wants to get coached by you or they want to follow you. Where do they go? What do they do?
It's super easy to follow me. It's youtube.com/inspired evolution. Just come along to YouTube and hit subscribe. The reason I point everybody to YouTube because you'll find meditations there. When I have coaching insights, I'm coaching people. I'll record a separate video afterwards and go, hey, that was a really powerful insight. And I think it's worth sharing. It might help your life along a little bit as well. So there's coaching insights there. There's a whole bunch of, there's a podcast that comes out every week and we, snip down content from there for you to be able to, it's bite-sized content and also long-form podcasts coming out every week. So there is literally something coming out every day on the YouTube at Inspired Evolution. And if you're interested in coaching, there are some testimonials even on YouTube for you to go check out. I think there's at least 2 dozen odd, maybe even 3 dozen. We release one every week because I've coached a bunch of people and gotten a bunch of testimonials. So the team just publishes a testimonial for you to connect to, and maybe you connect to one of the stories and there's like, actually that makes a lot of sense. Because I'll be honest, life coaching and transformation, it's a difficult sell, right? Because like whatever your problem is, let's talk about it and let's see where it goes.
Right.
But if you can listen to the testimonials, you might find someone that went through something similar, and actually, hey, there's something useful in there that you might find that Amrit could help you through with.
Yeah.
But if you do want to I've listened to this conversation, I want to find out more about Amrit and his coaching, amrit.coach.
Okay.
That's the website. Super easy.
Well, I want to thank you on behalf of myself and my audience for coaching us for the past hour. It's been a joy. I could talk to you forever because I really resonate with you. I love your energy. I love everything about you. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, Mike, thank you so much for having me. So grateful. And yeah, I loved our episode on our podcast as well. And yeah, just having the recording in my pocket. Your work is incredible, man.
Perfect.
Like, really appreciate you and your tribe and audience. Thank you so much for having me here today.
All right, guys, I'll be back in just a second for our weekly Mountains of Hope moment. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back, everybody. I hope you loved that segment with Amrit as much as I did. I just love the guy for some reason. I don't know. He's a beautiful soul to me. So I want to talk about, people are always coming up and saying, hey, I don't know how to manifest. What is manifestation? How do you manifest? The truth is, we're all manifestors. I mean, everything in your life, you manifested. You brought everything into your physical reality with your thoughts and your desires, and you're a manifester. The trick is realizing it. Because if you are a manifester, then that means you brought everything into your life. So you need to take responsibility for everything in your life. And most of us don't. And therefore, what are we? We're victims of random circumstances. We're victims of this. We don't understand how powerful we really are. We don't understand what a supercomputer we have up here. We don't understand the intuition we have. We don't understand that the power of our heart to attract what we desire once we tell the world what we want. It's a magnetic energy that brings it to us. And so therefore, if you've manifested everything in your life and you don't own it, then you're there for a victim. And that's the biggest problem I see in the world today is everybody's got this victim mentality. And it's so self-defeating. And where does it come from? It comes from media. It comes from the government. The government wants to put everybody on, they want everybody to be beholden to the government. That's why they give out so much money, and so then we don't work, and we get lazy, and we don't manifest what we truly desire. So what's the opposite of a victim? A creator. And that's what I want you guys to get, to realize that you came here to become a powerful creator and to create something beautiful, not only for you and your family and your community, but for all of us, for the world. And when you move from the head to the heart, which I talk about a lot, and you realize that you have this amazing ability to create, and create from this space here, because you can only create beauty from here. Here you can create all kinds of nonsense, drug addiction, gambling addictions, crimes, dishonesty, meanness, ugliness. This is our essence. This is our soul. This is our purpose. So let's talk about becoming a powerful creator, taking responsibility for everything in your life. For example, I'll give you a perfect example. I manifested some serious health concerns. Heart, brain, prostate, mercury poisoning. I'm not blaming anybody for any of that because I know the truth, The heart, they want to say, is genetic. Mercury poison, I don't know where it came from, but I'm going to find out. That's my responsibility. It's my life, right? So I'm not relying on the doctors. I'm talking to doctors, and I'm talking to naturopath doctors, and I'm talking to Western medicine doctors, and I'm taking all this data in, and I'm seeing what resonates in my heart. But I'm the ultimate decision maker. I don't blindly walk into the doctor's office and say, fix me. I don't blindly walk into the shaman and say, fix me, okay? Let's talk about what's going on. But the thing is, now that I've taken full responsibility of my health issues, guess what? I can create health again, okay? I can fix that problem because I'm a creator. And there's many, many ways to do that, and we don't have time to really go deep into that. I encourage you to check out my personal website, and there's a lot of information, or my YouTube channel. There's a lot of information there. It doesn't cost you anything, where you can learn the process of the way I teach it, the way I use it, using the power of your own voice, using the power of sound, using the present moment, because everything happens in the present moment. And so, but I know a lot of people struggle with finding that purpose, and that's the driver, okay? And so how do you find your purpose? Again, you got to go ideally into nature. Get rid of your electronic stuff. Get rid of all that and just sit there, contemplate, and ask the creator of all, why am I here? Why did I choose to be here? And what am I supposed to do? And then sit there and say, what lights me up? What makes me stay up late at night and pops me out of bed first thing in the morning, excited to go out there and to create this beautiful thing that's called my purpose. And as you get older like me, then it becomes a legacy. So I'm 66 years old. I've raised my kids. I've had my business success. But now I want to leave a legacy not only for my kids, my grandkids, but for everybody, because we're all connected. And this is what humanity needs today. So go out there, figure out your purpose, realize you're a powerful creator, and make it happen. As Nike says, just do it. And until next time, go out there, live your life with passion, and manifest the life you truly deserve.
Thank you for listening to The Power of Your Voice with Mike Murphy. This podcast is brought to you by Mike Murphy Unfiltered, The Creation Frequency, Mountains of Hope, and the Love from Margot Foundation. These sponsors are dedicated to helping you unleash your full potential and live a life of joy and abundance. If you enjoyed this episode, please visit our website at mikemurphyunfiltered.com and subscribe to our podcast.